This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now, I know this isn't my normal intro, you don't even really see my face this time. I decided to keep it a little bit more calm, a little bit more low-key, like how my older videos used to be, because I am still recovering from Mr. Grumpy Pants Storm Dragon, and it also has nothing to do with the fact that I look like an absolute hot mess still from that video, so I'm just keeping it real. We're just gonna do my voice this time. But in this video, we are going to be actually collabing with another artist named Mischievous Raven. If you have seen my Moon Kitsune video, that was actually another collab we've done where she designs a creature of some sort and then I go and recreate it. And so I will show some of her art as well as the design we are going to be focusing on in this video. Now, if you happen to really like the end result of this piece and are interested, we are actually going to be auctioning off this piece, and so if you look down in the description, I will have all that information available for you. But let's hop into the video. So the first step for this crystal fox that I'm going for is going to be casting the head. Now I'm using my go-to head for when I want something a little bit more whimsical and enchanting and just magical looking. I've had this head since like 2017 and I still use it to this day. I just had a really good art day that day, and to this day I'm just like, this is still like a really good sculpt and I love the way it looks. For those asking, I do use Smooth Cast 300 for all my resin castings, and I highly recommend while something is curing, just stick the armature straight in while it's curing, because then it locks the armature right in place and you don't have to drill holes or figure out how to glue it in or attach it or anything like that. It is in there and it ain't ever coming out. So pretty much every one of my videos is now going to have 3D printing in it, and so I 3D printed all the feet because nothing beats just having to print all 4 feet instead of having to sculpt or resin cast all 4 feet. Just they're all done at once. It is absolutely wonderful. Now in the design, the fox actually has antlers, and so I'm going to be taking my Dremel and just slowly drill in some holes where I want the antlers to sprout out from, so that way I can insert them later on. And now it's time for some lovely armature making ASMR. If anyone's interested in the actual product, I leave those links in the description. To attach the feet to the armature, I just fill the hole with hot glue and then I push the ball and socket into the hole, and so that way the hot glue is going to actually cure, or I guess cool off, around the socket joint, and so it won't be able to be pulled back out. So place it right away, because otherwise you know it's gonna be hard to remove it. Once they're all attached, it's now time to build up the body, and for that I use quilt batting, and it comes in these really big long sheets that you can get pretty much anywhere, like Walmart, Amazon, any craft store will have it. And I just cut the sheet into really long strips, and I'll wrap it around the body over and over until it's built up to how I want. Now, something I always say and always mention, that if you're actually going to be making an art doll, you really want to keep in mind to not build up the body quite as much as you want the final end result to be, because whatever fabric you're going to add, especially if it's faux fur fabric, is going to add a lot of additional thickness to the piece, and so it'll end up being a body shape that you don't want. But like I always say, if you want chunk boy, you go and you get chunk boy, okay? If you want thin boy, you go and you get thin boy, okay? We support all body shapes and sizes here. He was like a lanky boy. He was definitely on the thin boy side. Since this is a crystal fox and we all know that I like adding lights to literally everything now, I'm going to be hiding a battery pack in his chest while I am building up the quilt batting stage. Now I'm going to show you later on how I make it removable so anybody who purchases this piece can have access to the battery pack. But yeah, crystals, lights, it just, come on, that seems to go hand in hand. So it was perfect. Once the body is all built up, it is now time to add fabric over that body. And I always say that I don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to sewing, and I don't really know how to teach you very well, so I highly recommend going to a channel who is actually competent in sewing because I have no idea what I'm doing. But I know I wanted 2 different colors of fur. So first I am cutting a white faux fur the length of the neck because I actually ended up using 2 different white faux furs, one that had a longer strand length and then one that had a shorter one because I wanted the neck to be very fluffy and I can pose it to be very whimsical. Look at my hair flowing in the wind kind of thing. So I wanted that, but I also wanted a really dark underbelly that I would gradient from a really dark black to a really light blue. And so I didn't want to airbrush just all black because it is possible, but it can be rather difficult to do. So I decided to just puzzle piece a bunch of different fabrics together with the white and black until, you know, the fox was sewn up. And I realized I didn't really explain anything that I'm doing and I'm kind of just rambling, but I mean, that's pretty much what I do every single time, so I'm just on brand with who I am. So how you guys doing? How's it going? Never mind, don't answer that, because now it's on to trimming, and for that I use a pet shaver, and I will highly recommend this little tool, especially if you're going to be making multiple art dolls, because it just gives the bulk fur off very evenly, smoothly, and quickly, and it has a bunch of different guard lengths that you can use, so that you can take off like a lot of fur if you want a lot of fur off here, a little bit of fur, a little bit off there. It's really versatile. It really helps to make this process go a lot quicker, and I just highly recommend it. But that being said, I will always go back in with scissors, especially always around the legs, and just to trim it up and to shape it a little bit better, because usually the pet shaver is big and bulky and it can have a little bit of a hard time getting into those really small tiny legs. So I always go back in with scissors just to make the like elbows, the knees, the ankles, those joints a little bit more prominent, and so they look a little bit more realistic. And while I'm trimming up those legs, let's take a moment to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Little Artist has been making and enjoying pottery, and he thought others might enjoy his work too. But he wasn't sure where to really begin, but with Squarespace it was super easy for him to show and sell his pottery in a secure way. They have all the tools you need, whether you're selling physical or digital items. One of Squarespace's many helpful features is the portfolio design. This really helps Little Artist show off all of his work and show behind the scenes. And with automatic image scaling, you're safe knowing that all your images will look their best. So if you're interested, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/kpcreations to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And thank you once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now once all the sewing is done, it's time to completely ruin all that by cutting a slit down the middle. I'm doing this so that I can get access to the battery pack like I mentioned before, but really all I'm doing is I'm cutting a slit down the length of the battery pack and then making sure the quilt batting is cut away so it can be removed freely. And then I actually use these Velcro strips that I found with a very, very, very strong adhesive. Please, if you guys use this, make sure you place it right the first time, because otherwise you're not going to be able to place it again. And I just place this over the faux fur, and so that the faux fur can hide the battery pack, it can hide the seams, and it works really, really well. It's really, really easy to do, and now you have access to the battery pack over and over again, so it's great. And once that's finished, it's now time to give this crystal fox some color, and for that I'm going to be using my gravity feed dual action airbrush, which is just really fancy talk for a pressure controlled airbrush. You put paint in from the top. You guys always seem to ask me if fur gets really crunchy or texturized when I'm airbrushing, but as long as you're being wary of what colors you're using, what paint you're using, and as long as you're going light with your layers, it really can not affect the fur at all. Also, I have this trick right here that I'm showing you. If you take a little bit of alcohol, like 70 to 90% alcohol, and you put on a paper towel and you actually like rub down where you just airbrushed, it does lighten the color a little bit, so that's something to keep in mind. But what it does, it helps the paint seep into like the entire fur throughout, so it makes sure it gets down to the backing so you don't see white all the way through. And it also like helps to really keep this softness and to preserve the texture of the fur that it had before you airbrush. And so especially when I'm doing multiple passes like I'm doing with the multiple blues that I want, and I want to get to a gradually dark color, so I'm really going to be making sure that I'm going in with that alcohol trick to make sure that it's keeping it so that the fur is not going to get crunchy at all. I absolutely love this trick, and it looks so great. Popping in for your not so daily reminder that if you have been thinking about a project it be it art or just something that you've really been wanting to do but you haven't been doing it because you're either saying to yourself, I'm not good enough or talented enough, I can't do that.
I don't even know where to begin or how to even start.
Hey, you stop that right now, okay? You look at me in these eye holes, okay? You look at me. You can do the thing, okay? That project, while this video is playing, go start it. I always say, go start it while this video is playing, whether that's making a materials list, writing out the steps that you're going to need to do to finish this project, or if you got everything, you know what you need to do, start the project. Just start it. I promise the first step is always the hardest. So just go start and you will feel so proud of yourself that you started your project. And who knows, you may even love what you end up making. Also drink water. Look. Drink some water. And I love you guys. Mwah. Also, I'd like to share with you these wonderful art pieces. Look at them. Aren't they so talented? Aren't they so lovely? Just mwah, mwah. If you'd like to share something, be it fan art or art doll you've made or just anything in general that you would like to show me, please use the hashtag KPtutorial so that I can find it and potentially share it in my next video. Okay, now let's get started. Back to the video. We ain't getting started, we already started. I don't know where I'm putting this in at, but I hope the video's turning out well.
And now it's time for crystals. Editor Sarah made a bunch of these off camera, so thank you for that. She also helped me do all the fairy lights and LEDs working for the crystals. So I'll also thank you for that. So basically what I did is for each fairy, like actual light on the fairy lights, I did a little dab of UV resin on the bottom of the crystal, and she helped me cure the light facing forward directly on the crystal, and I did a few coats of the UV resin just to make sure it was like really solidly in there, and so that way when I turn it on it's going to be shining up through the crystal and will hopefully look really cool. Now, all fairy lights are not made equal. Some can't handle hot glue touching it because of the high temperature. Some can't handle the UV resin. So you always want to make sure you do a test first to make sure your fairy lights, if you ever do anything with fairy lights, can handle it. So attaching all the crystals was kind of a little bit of a hot mess. What I decided to do was cut a slit on, I just keep messing up all the sewing, why do I bother sewing anything? But I cut a slit down the back and I'm cutting a little pocket in the quilt batting and filling that with hot glue and then inserting the crystal with the light. That this is why I said make sure that your fairy lights can handle hot glue because some can't. But essentially I just made a bunch of slits and I inserted the crystals all throughout the back, making sure that I varied the colors and the size so they weren't all looking the same or looking too even. But the fairy lights, it was like really hard to get them all compact in such a tight space, even though I like at the time I was like, this is plenty of space, we're gonna have extra room. The fairy lights were just like really compact and everywhere there, and I had wires going everywhere, and to hide my shame I just put a line of glue around the edge and I put the faux fur back over the edge to make sure that it was nice and seamless again. Hide the shame. No one can see, no one will know except the people watching this video. I did decide to put some crystals on the tail. I had a lot left over and I thought that the tail needed a little bit of something, so I just added a few there. They won't light up, but I thought it was still a nice touch. Now, I absolutely totally didn't forget to add the antlers a long time ago, and you're just seeing something that's completely imaginary and not real whatsoever because the antlers are already on there. But I guess if you had to see this, you would know that I am putting hot glue in the holes and then inserting the antlers there just to hold them in place while I go around them with epoxy sculpt. But again, I already added the antlers and I don't know where you're getting this magical, imaginary, totally not real footage from because I've already added the antlers. But if you were also to know, I textured the epoxy to make sure that it matched the fur texture from the resin head. But once again, I have no idea what you guys are talking about because the antlers are already on there. That was a weird gap in the video, but anyways, it is now time to get down with painting. And for that, I am just using acrylics. Please feel free to use any that you want. You can use like absolute low tier apple bottom. You can use high tier golden or Liquitex heavy body. You can go middle ground. You can go with some Folkart. Just what I'm trying to say is you can use any type of paint that you want. And I am just going to be making sure that the face matches the gradient the best that I can with the airbrush. It's always easier to airbrush a gradient rather it is to paint it, but what I'm using is a water blending technique where I quickly layer all the different colors that I want and then take some water and then just wipe it over everything, and it helps to blend those colors in seamlessly. Well, as seamlessly as I can get anyway. For painting the eyes, I did consider giving this one a pupil, but you guys know how I am. I decided to go back to the hashtag no pupil gang and just give this one a really cool gradient because it kind of reminds me of like icy crystals or kind of like a dark crystal kind of vibe, but the eyes just look really icy and crystal-like, and I love the way that they look. And to make them pop even more, I went over them with UV resin, and it's just, oh, they look so, it like enhances all the colors and then makes it so reflective. It just, you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm jumping up and down. It's just, I love it. The design does have some skulls attached to the body here and there, and so I 3D printed those off of Thingiverse, and so I'll leave some links in the description for anyone who has 3D printing capabilities that wants to see where I got these skulls from. I'll leave links for those down below. So I'm just going over it with a quick base coat of black, and then I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing just to really bring out all those details and make them pop. And then I wrapped some chains around them and I'm attaching them to the body. We all know I love to add little chains and trinkets onto bodies. This is nothing new. And so when Mischievous Raven put them in the design, I was just like, you're just catering to me and all my aesthetics. So I made the bird hanging like in the design. I put the skull on like the side, and then just some little dangly bits on the side just to add a little bit more visual interest. I love making little drapey chains on art dolls. I don't know why, but it's like a thing I love to do. Along with like adding a bunch of things on. So just adding the crystals, and this was just my aesthetic, okay? This whole piece was just my aesthetic. I really, really love it. Now, I know the original design called for a sphere that the antlers were holding, but I thought that a crystal would be more suited since the whole design was like really spiky and overall pointy and sharp. It just didn't really look right for such a round sphere to be in the center, so I decided to use a crystal. And to get it to hang in the center and look like it was floating, I used just some fishing line and super glued the edges around the antler so it was nice and secure. And that is the final step, and after that we can look at the final result of this beautiful crystal fox.